The bustling Nexus 7 spaceport never slept. A constant stream of travelers from across the galaxy poured through its gleaming corridors, their diverse physiologies creating a living tapestry of interstellar life. Amid this vibrant chaos, Aurelia Solaris moved with careful precision, her 7-foot frame casting a long shadow as she navigated the morning crowd. She felt the stares. She always did. As a Solarian gravitational engineer, Aurelia's very existence defied convention. Female Solarians rarely left their homeworld, and those who did certainly didn't grow to her imposing height. Nor did they possess skin that shimmered with an internal golden glow, a rare mutation that marked her as something other, something to be feared rather than approached. "Pardon," she murmured, her voice deliberately soft, as she sidled past a cluster of Arcturan diplomats. They flinched collectively, edging away as if her proximity might contaminate them. One muttered something about unstable elements to his companion. Aurelia pretended not to hear, though her inner light flared briefly brighter, a telltale sign of emotion she couldn't fully suppress. The central atrium of Nexus 7 opened before her, a vast cathedral to interstellar cooperation. Officially, anyway. In practice, it was a monument to carefully negotiated tension, where species maintained a fragile peace through strict adherence to cultural boundaries and hierarchies. Aurelia had long ago learned her place in this unspoken order, at the margins, head down, making herself as small as her considerable frame would allow. "Engineer Solaris." The voice came from behind, sharp and familiar. Terran, her Solarian supervisor, approached with his characteristic quick stride. Unlike Aurelia, he stood at the species' typical height, his greenish skin bearing the conventional mottled pattern that signified normalcy. "You're scheduled for core inspection at 0800. It's 0747 now." "I'm aware of the time, Supervisor," Aurelia replied, keeping her tone neutral despite the implied criticism. "I've already reviewed the preliminary diagnostics remotely. The oscillation patterns show nominal variation." Terran's eyes narrowed. "Just be punctual. The commander has concerns about micro-fluctuations in Sector 4. I documented those 3 cycles ago," she said. "My report detailed—" Yes, your extensive reports," Terran interrupted, making no effort to hide his disdain. "Just fix the problem, and try not to. Glow so much around the sensitive equipment. It's unsettling to the junior engineers." As he stalked away, Aurelia felt the familiar weight of isolation settle more heavily on her shoulders. This was the reality she'd accepted when she'd left the Solarian breeding enclave 8 standard years ago. Her own people viewed her as an aberration, a female who dared pursue intellectual work, whose body refused to conform to their aesthetic and biological norms. Other species simply saw her as a threat, too big, too bright, too strange. Swallowing the bitter taste of resignation, Aurelia made her way toward the gravity core access corridor. The station's artificial gravity was her responsibility, her domain of expertise. Here, at least, she could lose herself in the elegant mathematics of gravitational fields, in the precise calibrations that kept thousands of beings from floating away into the void. The core didn't judge her appearance or flinch at her approach. "Authorized personnel only beyond this point," the station AI announced as she approached the security checkpoint. "Aurelia Solaris, Chief Gravitational Engineer. Authorization code Delta 7 Gold Prism," she replied, placing her hand against the biometric scanner. Her skin pulsed slightly brighter at the contact point. "Identity confirmed. Welcome, Engineer Solaris." The barrier field dissipated with a soft hum. The gravity control center was mercifully empty when she arrived. The junior engineers must be at their morning briefing. Aurelia exhaled slowly, releasing tension she hadn't realized she'd been holding. These moments of solitude were precious, the only times she truly felt at ease. She settled into her workstation, calling up the holographic displays of the station's gravitational grid. The intricate lattice of blue light surrounded her, revealing the invisible force that bound the station together. Her fingers moved with practiced grace through the projection, adjusting values, testing responses, seeking the source of those micro-fluctuations Taryn had mentioned. Time slipped away as she worked, her consciousness merging with the mathematical models before her. This was why she endured the daily indignities, the constant reminder of her otherness. This work mattered. It kept people safe, even those who crossed the corridor when they saw her approaching. "Excuse me." The voice startled her from her focus. Aurelia spun in her chair, instinctively dimming her glow, a defensive habit developed over years of unwanted attention. A human stood in the doorway. Male, by their binary standards. Average height for his species, which made him nearly a foot shorter than Aurelia. Dark hair with curious patches of gray at the temples. Eyes the color of Earth's oceans. She'd studied the planet extensively, fascinated by its anomalous gravitational quirks. His face bore the faint creases humans developed with age, though she knew their chronology poorly enough that she couldn't guess his years. "This is a restricted area," she said automatically, rising to her full height. Most beings found her size intimidating. It was easier that way, a quick end to unwanted interactions. But the human didn't step back. Instead, his lips curved upward, revealing blunt teeth in what Aurelia recognized as a smile, not a nervous grimace or a fearful baring of teeth, but a genuine, warm expression. He was smiling. At her. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, his voice carrying a pleasant resonance. "I'm looking for the person in charge of gravity around here. That would be you, I'm guessing." Aurelia found herself momentarily speechless. When was the last time someone had approached her with such normalcy? No visible fear, no disgust, not even the exaggerated politeness that barely masked discomfort. Yes, I'm Engineer Aurelia Solaris, Chief of Gravitational Systems." She straightened her uniform, suddenly self-conscious in a new way. "And you are?" "Marcus Clark," he replied, stepping forward with an extended hand. Another human custom. Physical contact as greeting. "I've just transferred to Nexus 7, Earth Diplomatic Force." Aurelia hesitated before carefully extending her much larger hand. Human skin was fragile. She needed to moderate her strength. To her surprise, his grip was firm, his hand warm against her naturally cooler skin. "A diplomat," she said, withdrawing her hand perhaps too quickly. "You're rather far from the diplomatic sector." Marcus's smile widened. "I like to understand how things work, especially the things that keep me from floating away into space. Mind if I ask you a few questions? I promise I won't touch anything." Before Aurelia could formulate a response, the door hissed open again. Taryn entered, flanked by two junior engineers, both Solarian males, who carefully avoided looking directly at Aurelia. "Engineer Solaris, the briefing started 5 minutes ago," Taryn began, then stopped abruptly upon noticing Marcus. His demeanor shifted instantly from irritation to obsequious courtesy. I wasn't aware we had a visitor from the Diplomatic Corps. I'm Supervisor Taryn, Head of Engineering Operations." "Marcus Clark," the human replied, offering his hand again. "Just getting acquainted with your excellent gravity chief here." Taryn's expression flickered with confusion as he shook Marcus's hand. "I see. Well, Engineer Solaris has a rather pressing schedule today. Perhaps I could arrange a proper tour for you later. One of our junior engineers would be delighted to explain our gravity systems. The dismissal was so familiar that Aurelia had already begun gathering her data tablets, preparing to be sidelined as usual. But Marcus surprised her again. "Actually," he said, "I was specifically hoping to speak with Engineer Solaris. I understand she pioneered the adaptive resonance model that allows for species-specific gravity adjustments within personal quarters. It's quite remarkable." Aurelia couldn't hide her astonishment. Few people on the station even knew about her innovation, let alone sought her out because of it. Her glow brightened involuntarily, a surge of golden light that made the junior engineers step back in alarm. Terran's mouth tightened into a thin line. "I see. Well, the briefing can proceed without Engineer Solaris this once, but I expect a full report on your diagnostics by end of shift." He gestured to the juniors, and they followed him from the room with obvious relief. When the door closed, Aurelia found herself alone with the human, uncertain how to proceed. Social interactions were not her strength, especially unexpected ones. "You know about my adaptive resonance model?" she asked finally. Marcus nodded. "I make it a point to research the places I'm assigned. Your name came up repeatedly in the station's technical achievements." He glanced at the holographic display still hovering above her workstation. "That's the current gravity grid? Beautiful work." "Thank you," she said, the words feeling strange in her mouth. When had anyone last complimented her work to her face? "It's a complex system. Most people don't appreciate the mathematical elegance involved." "I'd like to learn," Marcus said. Then, with a slight tilt of his head, he added, "Maybe over lunch? I'm still finding my way around the station's amenities." Aurelia's glow pulsed with surprise. "Lunch with me!" "Unless you're too busy fixing those micro-fluctuations in Sector 4, he replied with another smile, somehow letting her know he'd overheard Terran's earlier criticism. She should decline. Maintain the professional distance that protected her from inevitable disappointment. But something about this human's direct gaze, the way he looked at her, without flinching from her light or her height, made her usual caution falter. "There's a place called the Cosmic Palette in the central hub," she heard herself saying. "They cater to multiple species' nutritional requirements." "Perfect. Shall we say 1300 hours? I have a welcome briefing to attend first." Aurelia nodded, still not quite believing this interaction was real. 1300 hours. As Marcus turned to leave, he paused in the doorway. "Oh, and Engineer Solaris? That glow of yours, it's extraordinary, like captured starlight." With that, he was gone, leaving Aurelia standing in stunned silence, her golden skin shimmering brighter than it had in years. For the first time since arriving on Nexus 7, someone had smiled at her. Not out of obligation or diplomatic necessity, but with what seemed like genuine interest. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Aurelia felt something dangerous begin to crack the careful armor around her heart. Hope. The Cosmic Palette occupied a prime location in Nexus 7's central hub, its transparent dome offering spectacular views of the stars and the graceful curves of the station's outer rings. Aurelia arrived precisely at 1300 hours, having spent an embarrassing amount of time in her quarters debating whether to change from her standard engineering uniform. In the end, practicality won. She had afternoon diagnostics scheduled and couldn't justify the time to return to her quarters to change again. She hesitated at the entrance. The restaurant was crowded, as it always was during peak meal hours. A dozen different species mingled inside, their varied anatomies accommodated by the adaptable furniture. Aurelia rarely ate in public. The stairs made food stick in her throat. "Engineer Solaris!" Marcus was already inside, waving from a table near the viewport. He'd changed from his earlier attire into what she recognized as a formal Earth diplomatic force uniform, midnight blue with silver accents that caught the light as he moved. Several nearby diners glanced between him and Aurelia with obvious curiosity. A human diplomat dining with the anomalous Solarian engineer? It would be gossip by dinner. Taking a deep breath, Aurelia made her way across the restaurant, acutely aware of how her height and glow drew attention. The table Marcus had chosen was designed for larger species, with reinforced seating that would actually support her frame, a thoughtful detail she hadn't expected. "I hope I'm not late," she said as she carefully settled onto the chair. "Right on time," Marcus replied. "I got here early to secure a good spot. The view is something else, isn't it?" Aurelia glanced out at the starfield. "Yes, though I rarely take the time to appreciate it." "Occupational hazard of working on a space station," Marcus said with a small laugh. "The extraordinary becomes ordinary so quickly." Before she could respond, a Betelgeusian server approached their table, its 4 arms carrying menus and water vessels. "Welcome to Cosmic Palate," it chittered in the station's common language. "We are pleased to serve Earth Diplomatic Corps and—" It hesitated, compound eyes swiveling toward Aurelia. "And guest. Chief Gravitational Engineer Aurelia Solaris," Marcus supplied smoothly. "And we'd like menus calibrated for human and Solarian physiology. Please." The server chittered an acknowledgement and placed 2 different tablets on the table before retreating with a bobbing motion that Aurelia knew signified discomfort among its species. "I apologize for any awkwardness," she said quietly, keeping her glow deliberately dim. "My presence tends to complicate social situations." Marcus looked up from his menu with a furrowed brow. "You have nothing to apologize for. And if that server provides subpar service because of some ridiculous prejudice, I'll have a word with management." The fierce declaration took Aurelia by surprise. "That's not necessary. I'm accustomed to such reactions." "That doesn't make them acceptable," Marcus replied, his blue eyes intense. Then, with a visible shift, he softened his expression. "But I didn't invite you to lunch to make you uncomfortable. Tell me about these micro-fluctuations your supervisor mentioned. Anything serious?" Grateful for the shift to professional matters, Aurelia activated her menu and scrolled through the Solarian options while explaining. "Not serious. No. Sector 4 houses primarily Arcturan diplomatic residences. Their bodies are more sensitive to gravitational changes than most species, so the system is calibrated to maintain extremely precise conditions. What they're experiencing is within normal parameters. A variation of 0.003% is imperceptible to most beings. But the Arcturan ambassador has filed 3 complaints." "Politics," Marcus said with a knowing nod. "Sometimes I think half my job is managing perceptions rather than realities." "A common feature of our respective professions. It seems—" The server returned, still chittering nervously. "Have esteemed guests made selections?" Marcus ordered something called pad thai, while Aurelia selected a mineral-rich protein synthesis that approximated traditional Solarian cuisine. As the server retreated, Marcus leaned forward slightly. "So how does a Solarian female become a gravitational engineer on a major interspecies hub? If you don't mind my asking. My briefing materials indicated that's somewhat unusual." The question brushed against personal history Aurelia rarely discussed. But there was something in Marcus's direct gaze that made her consider answering honestly rather than deflecting as usual. "It is highly unusual," she admitted. "Female Solarians traditionally remain on our homeworld, managing breeding contracts and political alliances, while males pursue scientific and diplomatic endeavors off-world." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I was not well suited to traditional roles." "Because of your height and your glow?" Marcus asked. Aurelia nodded. Partly. I am considered physically anomalous, too tall, incorrectly pigmented. But more significantly, I showed an aptitude for mathematical modeling that was impossible to ignore. My clutch mother made an unprecedented decision to sponsor my education rather than my breeding potential. She sounds remarkable. She was practical. A female with my characteristics would never secure advantageous breeding contracts. My intellectual capabilities offered an alternative form of value. Aurelia hadn't intended her tone to carry bitterness, but she heard it slip through nonetheless. Marcus studied her face. I'm sensing there's more to that story. Before Aurelia could decide how much more to reveal, their food arrived. The server placed their dishes with quick, nervous movements before scuttling away again. Aurelia noticed Marcus watching the Betelgeusians retreat with a slight frown. Is something wrong with your meal? She asked. What? No, it looks perfect, Marcus said, returning his attention to their table. Just making a mental note about something. Please, continue your story. If you're comfortable doing so. Aurelia sampled her food, finding it adequately prepared, if not particularly inspired. There isn't much more to tell. I excelled in my studies, specializing in gravitational mathematics. When Nexus 7 was constructed, they required expertise in creating a gravity system that could accommodate multiple species simultaneously. I developed the adaptive resonance model that allows individual quarters to be calibrated for specific physiological needs without disrupting the station's overall gravitational field. And instead of celebrating that achievement, they stuck you in a back office and let your supervisor take credit? Marcus guessed, demonstrating unexpected perceptiveness. Aurelia's glow brightened involuntarily. You are well informed for someone newly arrived. Marcus took a bite of his food, chewing thoughtfully before responding. I'm observant, and I've seen similar dynamics on other stations. Brilliant minds sidelined because they don't fit convenient categories. He pointed his fork at her. But that doesn't explain the glow. Is that common among Solarians where you're from? No, she said, the single syllable heavy with years of explanation. It's a rare genetic variation that affects perhaps 1 in 10 million. My cellular structure produces excess bioluminescent compounds, particularly in response to emotional or physical stimuli. It's harmless, but she trailed off. But it makes you impossible to ignore. Marcus finished for her. Hard to blend into the background when you literally light up a room. The simple understanding in his voice made something tight in Aurelia's chest loosen slightly. Precisely. My people value conformity and discretion. I am incapable of either. Their loss, Marcus said with that now familiar smile. I find it beautiful. Before Aurelia could formulate a response to such an unexpected compliment, a sharp voice cut through their conversation. Engineer Solaris, what a surprise to see you. Socializing. Terran stood beside their table, accompanied by 2 other Solarian males and an Arcturan diplomat. All 4 regarded Aurelia with varying degrees of disapproval. Supervisor Taran, Aurelia acknowledged, her glow immediately dimming to its faintest level. I'm on my allocated meal break. So, I see. Terran's gaze shifted to Marcus. Mr. Clark, I trust Engineer Solaris is answering your questions adequately? More than adequately, Marcus replied, his tone pleasant but with an underlying firmness Aurelia hadn't heard before. She's been explaining the intricacies of your gravity systems. Fascinating stuff. One of the Solarian males, Morth, a junior engineer who particularly avoided Aurelia, made a sound suspiciously like a snort. Careful, human. She'll talk your ear off about gravitational theory if you let her. Not exactly standard lunch conversation. I find intelligence attractive, Marcus responded without missing a beat. Especially when paired with innovation and dedication to one's craft. Aurelia nearly choked on her water. Was the human flirting with her in front of her colleagues? Impossible. She must be misinterpreting his cultural signals. Terran's expression soured further. Yes, well, Engineer Solaris, don't forget the Sector 4 diagnostics scheduled for 1400 hours. I am aware of my schedule, Supervisor, she replied, struggling to keep her tone neutral. The Arcturan diplomat, Ambassador Dreth, Aurelia now recognized, fixed her with cold eyes. Perhaps you could prioritize the gravitational fluctuations in the diplomatic quarters. Engineer, some of us are experiencing discomfort. The variations are within established parameters. Ambassador, Aurelia explained. 0.03% is affecting my sleep cycles, the ambassador interrupted. I expect it resolved by tonight. Marcus set down his fork with deliberate care. Ambassador Dreth, isn't it? I believe we're scheduled for introductions tomorrow at the diplomatic briefing. It's a pleasure to meet you early. His tone suggested it was anything but a pleasure. I understand Arcturans have exceptionally sensitive gravitational perception, a remarkable evolutionary adaptation to your homeworld's unusual gravitational patterns. The ambassador blinked, momentarily diverted. Yes, that's correct. Our species developed in a region with significant natural gravitational anomalies. Fascinating, Marcus continued smoothly. Which means you can perceive variations that other species cannot. Variations that are, in fact, normal and completely safe. As Engineer Solaris was explaining, I'm sure someone of your diplomatic experience appreciates the challenges of maintaining systems that accommodate dozens of different physiologies simultaneously. The ambassador's color shifted slightly, an Arcturan sign of embarrassment. Aurelia noted with surprise. Well, yes, of course. However, I have no doubt that Engineer Solaris will investigate your concerns thoroughly, Marcus continued. Her reputation for precision is, after all, why she's the chief gravitational engineer on Nexus 7. He smiled at Aurelia. Isn't that right, engineer? Aurelia found herself caught in the unexpected support. Yes, I will conduct a complete diagnostic this afternoon. Ambassador. Terran looked like he'd swallowed something sour. We should let you finish your meal. Good day, Mr. Clark. He nodded stiffly at Aurelia before leading his group away to a table on the far side of the restaurant. When they were out of earshot, Aurelia stared at Marcus with undisguised astonishment. Why did you do that? Do what? He asked innocently, returning to his meal. Defend me. Imply that I'm respected. Marcus's expression grew serious. Because you should be respected. Aurelia, your work is brilliant, and the way they treat you is unconscionable. He hesitated, then added more softly. And because you dimmed your light when they approached. I didn't like seeing that. Aurelia felt her glow responding to his words, brightening despite her attempt to control it. Other diners glanced their way, curious about the golden radiance emanating from her skin. You are a very unusual human, Marcus Clark, she said finally. He grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. Now, tell me more about these diagnostics you have scheduled. Is there anything I can do to help? I have some technical background, despite the diplomatic title. As they finished their meal, Aurelia found herself talking more freely than she had in years, explaining the complexities of the gravitational systems she'd designed and the challenges of maintaining them with limited support. Marcus asked intelligent questions, demonstrating an unexpected grasp of physics principles. By the time they left the restaurant, Aurelia realized with shock that she'd experienced something entirely new on Nexus 7, enjoyment of another's company. "I should return to the gravity control center," she said, as they stood in the central hub. "The diagnostics will take several hours." "Of course." Marcus nodded. "Would it be too forward to ask about dinner? My quarters have a cooking unit. I could prepare something Earth-style that's compatible with Solarian biochemistry." Aurelia's pulse quickened. "Dinner? In your quarters?" "Too forward," Marcus concluded with a self-deprecating smile. "I apologize. I sometimes forget interstellar social protocols." "No," Aurelia said quickly, surprising herself. "It's not too forward. I rarely receive such invitations." "Their loss," Marcus said simply. "Shall we say 1900 hours? Residential Sector 3, Suite 427. "I'll be there," Aurelia promised, her glow pulsing gently with an emotion she hadn't felt in so long she barely recognized it. Anticipation. As she watched him walk away, Aurelia wondered what she was doing. One smile, one lunch, and she was agreeing to private dinner in a virtual stranger's quarters? It was reckless, potentially dangerous, certainly unprofessional. And yet, as she made her way back to the gravity control center, Aurelia couldn't bring herself to regret it. For the first time in years, someone had looked at her, really looked at her, and hadn't turned away. Whatever came next, that moment had already changed something fundamental inside her. The afternoon diagnostics proceeded efficiently, though Aurelia found her thoughts continually drifting to Marcus Clark and his unexpected invitation. By 1830 hours, she had completed her work, verified that the fluctuations in the Arcturan diplomatic quarters were indeed well within safety parameters, and filed her report. She then hurried to her quarters to change before dinner. Standing before the mirror in her Spartan living space, Aurelia faced a dilemma she rarely encountered: what to wear for a social occasion. Her wardrobe consisted almost entirely of engineering uniforms and practical clothing designed to accommodate her unusual height. After several minutes of indecision, she selected a flowing tunic in deep blue that complemented her golden glow. It was one of the few non-uniform items she owned, purchased years ago for an award ceremony that she'd ultimately been too uncomfortable to attend. As she made her way to Residential Sector 3, Aurelia felt conspicuously visible. Off-duty, out of uniform, and glowing more brightly than usual due to her nervous anticipation. She drew stares from everyone she passed. She kept her eyes forward, pretending not to notice the whispers that followed in her wake. Suite 427 was located in a section reserved primarily for diplomatic personnel. Aurelia hesitated outside the door, suddenly unsure. What if this was some elaborate joke? What if... The door slid open before she could finish the thought, revealing Marcus in casual Earth attire, dark pants, and a simple shirt the color of storm clouds. His face lit up when he saw her, that now familiar smile appearing instantly. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "And you look luminous." Aurelia felt her glow pulse in response to the compliment. "Is that a joke about my bioluminescence?" "A sincere compliment," Marcus corrected, stepping back to invite her inside. "Please, come in." The quarters were standard diplomatic accommodation, but Marcus had clearly made efforts to personalize the space. Earth artifacts adorned the surfaces, small sculptures, printed photographs rather than holographic ones, a curious stringed instrument mounted on one wall. Most surprising was a collection of plants arranged near the viewport, their green leaves reaching toward the stars. "You've brought vegetation aboard," Aurelia observed, moving closer to examine the plants. These aren't from the station's hydroponics section. They're from Earth, Marcus confirmed. Special permission from the commander. They help me feel at home. They're beautiful, Aurelia said, gently touching a broad leaf. I've studied Earth's gravity, but know little of its flora. That's basil, Marcus explained, moving to stand beside her. An herb used in cooking, which reminds me, he gestured toward the small kitchen area, where various containers and implements were arranged. Dinner is almost ready. I've prepared a pasta dish that should be compatible with Solarian biochemistry. The station's database provided nutritional parameters. You researched Solarian dietary requirements? Aurelia asked, touched by the consideration. Of course. I wouldn't invite you to dinner only to poison you, Marcus replied with a wink. Though I should warn you, I'm not a professional chef. The casual banter continued as Marcus finished preparing the meal. Aurelia found herself relaxing incrementally, the tension she typically carried in her shoulders easing as they talked. Marcus served the food on mismatched plates. Personal items from Earth, he explained, and they settled at a small table near the viewport. So, Marcus said as they began eating, tell me about the real Aurelia Solaris, not the engineer, not the glow. You. The question caught her off guard. I'm not sure I understand the distinction. Marcus considered this. Let me approach it differently. What brings you joy, Aurelia? What do you do when you're not maintaining the station's gravity? She began, then stopped, realizing she had no ready answer. I develop theoretical models for improved gravitational systems. I study anomalous gravitational phenomena from across the galaxy. I work, Marcus supplied gently. You work all the time. Aurelia's glow dimmed slightly. Yes, I suppose I do. No hobbies? No interests outside of gravity? She thought for a moment. I enjoy mathematical puzzles, and I sometimes compose theoretical physics equations that have no practical application, just for the aesthetic pleasure of their elegance. Marcus smiled. That counts. What else? I collect data on unusual planetary formations with gravitational anomalies, she admitted. Places I'll likely never visit, but find fascinating nonetheless. Like a wish list of destinations? Aurelia hadn't thought of it that way. I suppose so, yes. Tell me about your favorite, Marcus prompted, his food temporarily forgotten, as he leaned forward with genuine interest. To her surprise, Aurelia found herself describing a binary planet system in the Cygnus sector, where gravitational forces created floating islands of crystalline material that changed color with the shifting tidal forces. She spoke with increasing animation, her glow brightening as she explained the mathematical beauty of the system's orbital patterns. I've never heard anyone describe orbital mechanics with such passion, Marcus said when she finally paused. It's captivating. Aurelia felt self-conscious suddenly. I've been monopolizing the conversation. I asked because I wanted to know, Marcus assured her, and I was right. There's much more to Aurelia Solaris than the brilliant engineer everyone sees. Or avoids seeing, she added quietly. Marcus set down his fork. Can I ask you something personal? Aurelia nodded cautiously. How do you bear it? The way they treat you? If I experienced a fraction of what I've seen directed at you today, I'd be... He trailed off, apparently searching for the right word. Furious, Aurelia supplied. I was initially, then resentful, then simply resigned. She looked down at her golden hands. One adapts to survive. By dimming your light, Marcus said softly, literally and figuratively. The observation was so accurate it sent a shiver through Aurelia's form. Yes. What if you didn't have to? She looked up sharply. What do you mean? What if you could be exactly who you are? Brilliant, glowing, extraordinary, without apology or accommodation. A pleasant fantasy, Aurelia said, her tone more bitter than she'd intended, but not the reality of Nexus 7. Marcus opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, a piercing alarm cut through the air. Red emergency lights began pulsing throughout the quarters. Attention all personnel. Gravitational anomaly detected in Central Core. All non-essential personnel evacuate to designated safety zones. Engineering team to gravity control immediately. This is not a drill. Aurelia was on her feet instantly. I need to get to the core. Marcus stood as well, his expression shifting from casual to focused with remarkable speed. I'll come with you. This is an engineering emergency, Aurelia protested. Diplomatic personnel should report to safety zones. I'm coming with you, Marcus repeated, his tone brooking no argument. He moved to a storage compartment and retrieved what appeared to be specialized equipment, not standard issue for diplomats. Aurelia wanted to question this, but had no time. The alarm continued its urgent wail, and her communicator buzzed with incoming alerts. Whatever was happening at the gravity core, it was serious. Fine, she conceded, but stay out of the way. They ran from the quarters, joining the flow of personnel moving through the corridors. Most were heading away from the central core, evacuating as directed. Aurelia moved against the tide, her height allowing her to see over the crowd. Marcus kept pace beside her, surprisingly agile for someone of his stature. When they reached the gravity control center, Aurelia found chaos. Junior engineers frantically worked at consoles, while Terran shouted contradictory orders. Emergency containment fields shimmered around the primary controls, indicating dangerous energy fluctuations. "Status report!" Aurelia demanded, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. Terran spun toward her, relief briefly overtaking his usual disdain. Core temperature rising, gravitational field unstable. We're looking at potential cascade failure. Aurelia moved to the main console, her hands flying over the controls. The holographic display showed critical readings in every sector. This isn't micro fluctuations. The entire system is destabilizing. We need to manually reset the primary resonators, Terran said. But the radiation levels in the core chamber. I'll go. Aurelia interrupted. Her species had greater radiation tolerance than most, and her specific physiology offered additional protection. Prepare the emergency stabilization protocol. If I can reset the resonators, you'll have a 60-second window to implement it. Terran nodded grimly. For once, he wasn't questioning her expertise or authority. As Aurelia moved toward the core chamber access, Marcus stepped forward. Wait. Before you go in there, you need to know something. There's no time. This isn't an accident, Marcus said urgently, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Look at the pattern of the fluctuations. He pointed to a specific section of the holographic display. That's a deliberate harmonic disruption. Someone sabotaged the core. Aurelia stared at him in shock. How could you possibly know that? Instead of answering, Marcus reached into his pocket and extracted a small metallic disc bearing an insignia she didn't recognize. I'm not just EDF. I'm with Earth Defense Intelligence. We've been tracking a group of Varian saboteurs who've targeted multiple interspecies stations. Their signature is gravitational disruption. The revelation struck Aurelia like a physical blow. Your intelligence? You approached me because of the gravity systems? Pain flashed across Marcus's face. Yes and no. I needed access to the gravity controls, but everything else, lunch, dinner, our conversations, that wasn't operational. Before Aurelia could process this betrayal, another alarm sounded, this one higher pitched and more urgent. Core breach imminent, one of the junior engineers shouted. Estimated 18 minutes to catastrophic failure. There was no time for personal feelings. The lives of everyone on Nexus 7 hung in the balance. Aurelia turned away from Marcus, focusing on the crisis at hand. "I'm going in," she announced, moving toward the core access. "Prepare containment protocols." "Aurelia, wait," Marcus called, following her. "You can't neutralize it alone. The sabotage device is designed to feed on standard gravitational adjustments. The more you try to stabilize it conventionally, the worse it gets." She paused at the access door. "How do you know this?" "Because we've seen it before," he said grimly. "And I brought something that might help." He lifted the equipment he'd retrieved from his quarters, a sleek device unlike anything in the station's standard inventory. "Prototype gravity shield. It can create a localized field to counter the harmonic disruption." Terran approached, his expression suspicious. "What is this? Who are you, really?" "Someone trying to prevent this station from tearing itself apart," Marcus replied tersely. "Engineer Solaris, we have to work together on this. The sabotage device will be near the primary resonator array." Aurelia's mind raced, calculating probabilities, weighing options. If Marcus was lying, they'd all die anyway when the core breached. If he was telling the truth. Fine, she decided. We go in together. Terran, monitor from here and prepare to implement the stabilization protocol on my signal. Terran looked like he wanted to object, but nodded stiffly. The core chamber access required additional security clearance. Aurelia placed her hand on the scanner, her glow pulsing against the surface. Authorization. Aurelia Solaris, Chief Gravitational Engineer. Emergency Override Protocol, Delta 7 Gold Prism. Emergency access granted. The station AI responded. Warning. Radiation levels exceeding safe parameters. Core instability detected. The massive door slid open, revealing the heart of Nexus 7's gravitational system. The core chamber was a vast spherical space dominated by the central gravity generator, a pulsing orb of contained energy surrounded by concentric rings of resonator arrays. Under normal circumstances, it was a marvel of engineering, a symphony of mathematical precision translated into physical form. Now, it was a maelstrom of chaotic energy. The normally blue-white light of the core had taken on an ominous purple hue. The resonator rings spun at irregular intervals, their synchronization shattered. And there, attached to the primary control junction, was a device that didn't belong. A black crystalline structure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The sabotage device, Marcus confirmed, pointing. Variant technology. It's designed to create harmonic disruption that feeds on itself. The more energy directed at stabilizing the system, the more it converts to destructive force. Aurelia accessed a control panel near the entrance, bringing up a diagnostic overlay. The core temperature is approaching critical. We have less than 15 minutes before catastrophic failure. I need to get close enough to deploy the shield, Marcus said, adjusting settings on his device. It creates a counter-harmonic field that should neutralize the sabotage device long enough for you to reset the resonators. The radiation will kill you before you get halfway there, Aurelia objected. I'll take the shield. Marcus shook his head. It's calibrated to human operational parameters. You wouldn't be able to activate it properly. Aurelia's frustration flared, her glow intensifying. So what do you propose? I go in with the shield. You guide me through the resonator reset procedure. We work together, or everyone dies. Another alarm blared. The core's purple glow deepened, and one of the resonator rings shuddered to a complete stop. Warning. Critical failure in resonator array 3. Gravitational stability at 27% and declining. Estimated time to core breach. 12 minutes. We don't have time to argue, Marcus insisted. Trust me, Aurelia. Trust. Such a simple word for such an impossible request. This human had approached her under false pretenses, used her for access to restricted systems, and now wanted her trust with the lives of thousands hanging in the balance. And yet, his eyes held the same direct gaze that had first drawn her attention, the same absence of fear or disgust when looking at her. Whatever his mission, whatever his deception, that at least seemed genuine. "The resonator controls are there," she said finally, pointing to a console near the core. "You'll need to input a harmonic sequence to reset the array. I'll guide you through it while you deploy the shield." Marcus nodded grimly. "Let's go." They moved into the chamber together, the unstable gravitational field immediately affecting them. Aurelia felt lighter, then heavier, her body struggling to adjust to the rapid changes. Marcus seemed to be having an even harder time, his smaller human frame more vulnerable to the fluctuations. "The radiation will affect you first," Aurelia warned as they approached the core. "Disorientation, then nausea. If your vision begins to blur, you need to retreat immediately." "Noted," Marcus replied tersely, his focus on the sabotage device growing larger as they approached. At the control console, Aurelia's hands flew across the interface, her mind calculating adjustments faster than the system could display them. "The primary resonators are completely desynchronized. I need to establish a baseline harmonic before attempting reset." Marcus positioned himself beside the sabotage device, his prototype shield held ready. "On your signal." Aurelia input a complex sequence, watching as the holographic display responded. "Shield activation in 3, 2, 1. Now." Marcus activated his device. A shimmering field of energy expanded from it, encapsulating the variant sabotage device. The effect was immediate. The purple glow dimmed, and the erratic spinning of the resonator rings slowed. "It's working," Aurelia exclaimed, her fingers dancing across the console. "I'm initiating resonator reset. Stand by." As she worked, Aurelia was acutely aware of Marcus beside her, his face strained with effort as he maintained the shield's position. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his breathing had become labored, effects of the radiation exposure. "How much longer?" he asked through gritted teeth. "The reset sequence requires 60 seconds of sustained harmonic alignment," Aurelia replied, not looking up from her work. 53 seconds remaining. Marcus nodded, his jaw clenched. The shield in his hands flickered momentarily, and the sabotage device pulsed in response, sending a shock wave of energy through the chamber. Both Aurelia and Marcus were thrown backward, away from the core. Aurelia recovered first, her larger frame more resistant to the gravitational surge. She scrambled back to the console, horrified to see the reset sequence had been interrupted. "We need to start over," she called to Marcus, who was struggling to his feet. "The shield needs to maintain contact for the full 60 seconds. Marcus staggered forward, the prototype shield clutched in white-knuckled hands. "I can't hold it that long. The radiation." Aurelia made a split-second decision. "I'll help you. My physiology can withstand more radiation exposure. The shield won't respond to—" "Not the shield. You," Aurelia interrupted. She moved to Marcus's side, her golden glow intensifying. "My bioluminescence isn't just aesthetic, it's bioenergetic. I can channel it to reinforce your cellular structure temporarily." Marcus stared at her in astonishment. "You can do that?" "Theoretically, I've never attempted it with a non-Solarian." She hesitated. "It requires physical contact." Understanding dawned in Marcus's eyes. "Do it!" Aurelia placed her hands on Marcus's shoulders, closing her eyes in concentration. Her glow increased dramatically, golden light flowing from her skin into his. Marcus gasped, his body straightening as energy coursed through him. Now, Aurelia said, opening her eyes. Together. They approached the core again, Aurelia maintaining contact with one hand while operating the console with the other. Marcus held the shield steady, its energy field stronger now, reinforced by Aurelia's power. Initiating reset sequence, Aurelia announced. 60 seconds of sustained contact required. Now. The seconds crawled by, each one feeling like an eternity. The sabotage device fought against the shield, pulsing with dark energy that strained against its containment. Marcus's arms trembled with the effort of holding the shield in place, but Aurelia's energy flowed through him, reinforcing his strength. 30 seconds, Aurelia counted. Resonator alignment at 40%. A crack appeared in the sabotage device, black energy leaking through like viscous fluid. The shield flickered, but held. 15 seconds, resonator alignment at 70%. Marcus's breathing was ragged, his face pale despite Aurelia's energetic support. The radiation was affecting him severely, even with her help. 5 seconds, resonator alignment at 95%. With a final pulse of resistance, the sabotage device shattered within the shield's containment field. At the same moment, the resonator rings synchronized perfectly, returning to their proper orbital patterns. The core's light shifted from purple back to its normal blue-white glow. "Reset complete," Aurelia exclaimed. "Terran, implement stabilization protocol now." Through the communication system, they heard Terran's voice. Stabilization protocol initiated. Core temperature decreasing. Gravitational field stabilizing. Marcus collapsed to his knees, the shield slipping from his grasp. Aurelia caught him before he could fall completely, cradling his smaller form against her glowing body. "We need to get you to medical," she said urgently. "The radiation exposure." "Too late," Marcus rasped. "The chamber's in lockdown. Standard procedure after core stabilization. We're sealed in for decontamination cycle." Aurelia checked the status panel by the door. He was right. The chamber was sealed for the mandatory decontamination period of 3 hours. No emergency override possible. "We need to move away from the core," she said, helping Marcus to a recessed area near the chamber wall where radiation levels were lower. The decontamination cycle will gradually reduce ambient radiation, but it takes time. She settled Marcus against the wall, her glow providing soft illumination in the dimmer section of the chamber. His skin had taken on an alarming grayish tint, and his breathing was shallow. "I can continue to provide bioenergetic support," Aurelia offered, placing her hand on his arm. Golden light flowed from her into him, and some color returned to his face. "Why are you helping me?" Marcus asked weakly. "I deceived you." Aurelia considered the question. "You also saved everyone on this station, including me." She paused. "And you smiled at me. No one does that." A weak laugh escaped him. "Is that all it takes to win over the brilliant Aurelia Solaris? A smile?" "An honest one, yes." She studied his face. "Was any of it real? Lunch? Dinner? The conversations?" Marcus met her gaze steadily despite his weakened state. "All of it. My mission was to identify and neutralize the Varian threat. Getting close to you was initially tactical, but from the moment you spoke about gravitational theory with such passion, I was captivated." "You're a skilled operative," Aurelia said, uncertainty coloring her tone. "Deception would be part of your training." "Then why risk my life to save the station? Why tell you the truth about the sabotage instead of maintaining my cover?" It was a fair question. "Perhaps your mission parameters included protecting Nexus 7. "They did," Marcus admitted. "But they didn't include telling the chief engineer about classified Earth defense technology. They didn't include revealing my true identity. Those were choices I made because..." He hesitated. Because I couldn't bear to see you risk your life without knowing the truth. Aurelia's glow pulsed with emotion. Even now, I don't know if I should believe you. I understand. Marcus closed his eyes briefly, pain etching lines in his face. When he opened them again, determination had replaced the pain. Let me prove it to you. Ask me anything. Something no intelligence briefing would cover. Something only I would know. Aurelia thought for a moment. What did you think? Truly think, when you first saw me glow? A smile touched Marcus's lips. That you were the most beautiful being I'd ever encountered. That your light reminded me of sunrise over Earth's oceans. Something I've missed terribly since joining the service. His voice softened. And that I couldn't understand why everyone else seemed afraid of something so extraordinary. The simple honesty in his voice resonated with something deep inside Aurelia. Her glow brightened involuntarily, filling their corner of the chamber with golden warmth. I believe you, she said quietly. They sat in silence for a few moments, Aurelia continuing to channel energy to support Marcus's radiation-damaged cells. The core hummed peacefully now, its stable blue-white light a reassuring presence. We need to discuss the Varian threat, Marcus said eventually. That sabotage device was just one part of a larger plan. My intelligence suggests there's a cell operating on Nexus 7, at least 3 operatives, possibly with help from someone inside the station's administration. Aurelia's mind raced with implications. The micro-fluctuations in Sector 4, they weren't random. They were tests, weren't they? Preparing for the larger sabotage. Marcus nodded. Exactly. And I suspect your supervisor Terran may be involved, willingly or unwittingly. The way he's consistently undermined your authority, kept you away from key systems. Or he simply dislikes me, Aurelia countered. Not everything is conspiracy. Perhaps. But his behavior today was suspicious. He seemed more concerned about my presence than the gravity malfunction. Aurelia couldn't disagree with that assessment. So what's the larger plan? Why target Nexus 7's gravity core? Nexus 7 is strategically positioned at the junction of 3 major trade routes. If it were destroyed or severely damaged, it would disrupt supply chains for dozens of worlds, including several Earth colonies. Marcus shifted, wincing as the movement clearly caused him pain. The Varians benefit from instability. Their economy is built on weapons, manufacturing, and security contracts. Economic terrorism, Aurelia concluded grimly, and they nearly succeeded. They still might, Marcus warned. The sabotage device was destroyed, but the operatives who planted it are still on the station. And now they know their plan has been discovered. Which makes them desperate. Dangerous. Aurelia's mind worked through possibilities. We need to alert station security. With what evidence? The device is destroyed. It's our word against theirs, and I suspect they have allies in high places. Aurelia's glow dimmed with realization. The Arcturan ambassador. His complaints about the micro-fluctuations were too specific, too insistent, and Arctura and Varia have historical alliances. Good catch, Marcus said with genuine admiration. We need proof, though. Something concrete to take to Commander Drill. Aurelia thought for a moment. The core's diagnostic systems record all energy signatures. If we can isolate the unique frequency of the Varian device, we can trace when it was first activated and potentially who accessed the core chamber before then. That could work, Marcus agreed. But we're locked in here for nearly 3 more hours. By then, they might have covered their tracks. Aurelia glanced at the control console across the chamber. The console there has access to the diagnostic archives. If I can reach it, I can begin the analysis now. The radiation levels near the core are still too high, Marcus objected. Even for you. Not if I modulate my bioenergetic field, Aurelia countered. It's theoretically possible to create a self-contained shield, similar to your device but organic in nature. Marcus looked skeptical. Theoretically possible doesn't mean safe. Neither is allowing Varian saboteurs to escape, Aurelia said firmly. She stood, her full 7-foot height impressive in the chamber's stark lighting. Continue to rest. The energy I've transferred will help your cells repair. But you need time. Before Marcus could protest further, Aurelia moved toward the core. As she approached, she concentrated on her bioluminescence, drawing the energy inward and then projecting it outward in a controlled field around her body. Her golden glow intensified, forming a visible aura that shimmered like a second skin. The radiation warnings blared as she neared the core, but Aurelia felt her shield holding steady. At the console, she worked quickly, calling up the diagnostic archives and setting parameters for the energy analysis. Identifying unknown energy signatures present during system destabilization, she murmured to herself, fingers flying across the controls. Cross-referencing with known technologies. The system worked through the complex calculations, eventually highlighting a distinct energy pattern, a unique signature that matched no known technology in the station's database. Got it, Aurelia called over her shoulder to Marcus. Varian energy signature isolated, now tracking its presence over time. The results appeared on the display, confirming her suspicions. The signature had first appeared in trace amounts during the reported micro-fluctuations in Sector 4, gradually increasing until the catastrophic sabotage attempt. More importantly, the system identified 4 distinct instances when the signature had entered the core chamber, each corresponding to an authorized access by maintenance personnel. Marcus, Aurelia called, her voice tight with discovery. I have the proof. And you were right about Terran. His access code was used each time the Varian signature entered this chamber. Can you access security feeds? Marcus asked, struggling to his feet despite his weakened condition. We need visual confirmation. Aurelia attempted to access the security subsystem, but a warning flashed on the display. Access denied. Someone's locked down the security archives. But I have the timestamp data and Taran's authorization codes. That should be enough for Commander Drill to initiate an investigation. If we can reach him before Taran realizes what we know, Marcus cautioned, making his way slowly toward her. We need a plan for when this chamber opens. Aurelia nodded grimly. 3 hours is a long time to plan, and I have access to the station schematics from here. We'll find a way. As Marcus reached her side, Aurelia instinctively extended her bioenergetic field to include him within its protection. Their shoulders touched, a physical connection that seemed to amplify the energy flowing between them. You know, Marcus said with a weak smile, when I imagined spending an evening locked in private quarters with you, this wasn't quite what I had in mind. Despite the gravity of their situation, Aurelia felt her glow pulse with unexpected warmth. Perhaps next time we can skip the radiation exposure and sabotage devices. Next time, Marcus repeated, his smile widening. I like the sound of that. Together, they turned their attention to the console, plotting a course of action for when the chamber doors would finally open. Outside, Nexus 7 continued its orbital dance, unaware that its fate hung in the balance, dependent on the unlikely partnership of a glowing Solarian outcast and a human who had dared to smile at her. For the next 3 hours, Aurelia and Marcus worked methodically, documenting evidence and formulating a strategy. Despite his radiation exposure, Marcus remained alert, his intelligence training evident in the precision of his planning. Aurelia found herself impressed by his resilience and the clarity of his thinking, even under physical duress. The decontamination cycle is nearly complete, Aurelia announced, as the chamber's countdown timer approached 0. "Are you certain you can manage?" Marcus stood with effort. His color improved, but still far from healthy. "I'll manage. Getting this evidence to Commander Drill is more important than my comfort." Aurelia had transferred the evidence to a secure data crystal, safely tucked into her tunic. "Remember, we can't trust the standard communication channels. We need to reach the commander directly." "His quarters are in Administrative Sector 1, Marcus confirmed. "The least likely path Terran would expect us to take." As the final seconds of the decontamination cycle ticked down, Aurelia moved to stand beside Marcus. Without thinking, she reached for his hand, her golden fingers enveloping his smaller ones. He looked up at her, surprise giving way to something warmer. "Whatever happens next," Aurelia said quietly, "thank you for smiling at me that first day." Marcus squeezed her hand. "Best decision I ever made." The chamber door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing an empty corridor beyond. The emergency had been declared over while they were locked inside, and regular station operations had resumed. This worked in their favor. 2 figures moving through normal corridors would attract less attention than during an evacuation. They moved quickly but unhurriedly, Aurelia deliberately dimming her glow to attract less attention. Marcus walked beside her, occasionally leaning on her arm when his strength faltered, but otherwise maintaining the appearance of casual conversation. "Something's wrong," Marcus murmured as they reached the central hub. "Security presence is minimal. After a core event, there should be increased patrols." Aurelia scanned the area, noting the absence of the usual security personnel. "You're right. Either they're deployed elsewhere, or someone's cleared the path," Marcus finished grimly. "We need to move faster." They increased their pace, taking less populated corridors toward Administrative Sector 1. As they approached the final security checkpoint, Aurelia's communicator buzzed with an incoming message. She checked it warily. "It's from Terran," she said, showing Marcus the text. "Report to gravity control immediately for emergency debriefing." "Ignore it," Marcus advised. "He's trying to locate us." They passed through the checkpoint using Aurelia's engineering override, drawing curious looks from the lone security officer, but no intervention. The administrative sector was quieter, its elegantly appointed corridors a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of the engineering sections. "Commander Drill's quarters should be at the end of this corridor," Aurelia whispered as they approached. "Suite 101. Marcus suddenly pulled her into an alcove, pressing a finger to his lips. Moments later, 2 figures passed by. An Arcturan she recognized as Ambassador Dreth, and a Varian male she'd never seen before. They were speaking in hushed tones, too quiet to overhear. "That's Krell," Marcus breathed once they had passed. "One of the Varian operatives I've been tracking. Why is he meeting with the ambassador?" "Confirming our suspicions about Arcturan involvement," Aurelia replied. "We need to hurry." They reached Commander Drill's quarters without further incident. Marcus pressed the notification panel, and after a brief delay, the door slid open to reveal the imposing figure of Commander Drill, a massive Arcturan with silver-streaked skin and 4 piercing eyes that widened at the sight of them. "Engineer Solaris," he rumbled, "and Earth Diplomatic Force Representative Clark. This is unexpected." "Commander, we need to speak with you urgently," Aurelia said. "In private. It concerns station security." The commander hesitated, his upper eyes narrowing while his lower ones scanned the corridor behind them. Finally, he stepped aside. "Enter quickly." Once inside, Marcus wasted no time. "Commander, the gravity core failure was not an accident. It was deliberate sabotage by Varian operatives." Commander Drill's expression remained impassive. "A serious accusation. What evidence do you have?" Aurelia produced the data crystal. "Complete energy signature analysis from the core diagnostics. identifying variant technology and tracking its presence over time. Also, access logs showing who entered the core chamber when the signature was present. The commander took the crystal, examining it without immediately accessing its contents. And who had access? Supervisor Taran, Aurelia stated flatly. And we have reason to believe Ambassador Dreth is involved as well. We just saw him meeting with a known Varian operative named Krell. Commander Drill's 4 eyes blinked in rapid succession, an Arcturan sign of distress or surprise. These are allegations against high-ranking officials. I will need to consult with station security before— With respect, Commander. Marcus interrupted, his voice firm despite his weakened state. We have reason to believe security may be compromised. This information needs to be acted upon immediately. The commander studied them both for a long moment. Aurelia was acutely aware of how they must appear, a glowing Solarian female and a radiation-sickened human, hardly the most credible messengers. I've known Ambassador Dreth for 15 years, Commander Drill said finally. He is a respected diplomat from my homeworld. Aurelia felt a chill of apprehension. If the commander's loyalty to his fellow Arcturan outweighed his duty to the station— Commander, she said carefully, I understand your position, but the evidence is clear. The Varian device nearly destroyed Nexus 7. Everyone aboard would have died. Including Ambassador Dreth, the commander pointed out. Not necessarily, Marcus countered. Our intelligence indicates the Varians have developed short-range teleportation technology. Key conspirators could have evacuated before catastrophic failure. This information seemed to give the commander pause. He inserted the data crystal into his personal console, reviewing the evidence in silence. Aurelia and Marcus exchanged glances, tension building as they waited for his response. Finally, Commander Drill looked up. This evidence is compelling, particularly the energy signature analysis. He tapped a command into his console. I am ordering a security lockdown of the following individuals: Supervisor Taran, Ambassador Dreth, and any Varian nationals currently on station. They will be detained for questioning pending a full investigation. Relief flooded through Aurelia, her glow brightening involuntarily. Thank you, Commander. Don't thank me yet, he replied grimly. If these allegations prove true, we're facing a serious diplomatic incident, and if your supervisor is indeed involved, the entire engineering department may be compromised. There's more, Marcus added. Based on previous Varian operations, this attempted sabotage is likely just one part of a larger plan. I believe they may have a backup strategy, possibly a direct attack on the station now that their covert approach has failed. Commander Drill's upper eyes narrowed. What kind of attack? Unknown, Marcus admitted. But Varian tactical doctrine favors overwhelming force once stealth has failed. The commander moved to a secure communication panel. I'm ordering all available security personnel to high alert status and requesting additional defense vessels from the nearest Federation outpost. He turned back to them. Engineer Solaris, I need you to return to the Gravity Control Center, not to report to Supervisor Taran, but to ensure our systems remain stable. If there is a secondary attack, the gravity systems may be targeted again. Understood, Commander, Aurelia acknowledged. And you, Mr. Clark, the commander continued, should report to medical for treatment of radiation exposure. Marcus straightened, his jaw set despite his obvious discomfort. With respect, Commander, I should accompany Engineer Solaris. If there is another attempt on the gravity systems, my knowledge of Varian tactics could be valuable. Commander Drill considered this for a moment, then nodded. Very well. But report to medical immediately afterward. That's an order. As they left the commander's quarters, Aurelia could hear him already issuing directives through the secure channel, Armed security teams would be mobilizing throughout the station, moving to detain the suspects they'd identified. "We should hurry," Marcus said as they moved swiftly through the corridors. "If Terran realizes we've exposed him, he'll try to finish what the sabotage device started," Aurelia concluded. "And he knows the gravity systems better than anyone except me." They increased their pace, Aurelia supporting Marcus when necessary. The corridors were busier now, and they drew curious glances from passing personnel. News of the security alert must be spreading, Aurelia realized. She hoped the commander's security teams would reach Tehran before he could act. Those hopes were dashed as they approached the gravity control center. The security guards who normally monitored the entrance were absent, and the door stood partially open, a clear violation of protocol. "Something's wrong," Aurelia whispered, pulling Marcus into a recessed doorway. The center should be secured at all times. Marcus pressed a small device to his ear, a communication unit Aurelia hadn't noticed before. "Security teams are reporting resistance in multiple sectors. Terran hasn't been located yet. The variant ship docked in Sector 7 is powering engines against orders. We need to secure the gravity controls," Aurelia decided. "If they destabilize the core again—" "I'll cover you," Marcus said, producing a small weapon from within his clothing. At Aurelia's startled look, he added, "Standard issue for Earth Defense Intelligence. I couldn't exactly tell you about it earlier." Aurelia nodded her understanding. "Stay behind me initially. My physiology offers more protection if there's an ambush." They approached the gravity control center cautiously. Aurelia's height allowed her to see through the partially open door before entering. The center appeared deserted. Holographic displays still active, but no personnel visible. "This isn't right," she murmured. "There should be at least 3 engineers on duty." Marcus adjusted his weapon. "Only one way to find out what's happening." They entered the control center, Aurelia immediately moving toward the main console while Marcus secured the door behind them. The display showed the gravity core functioning normally. All systems green. "Everything looks stable," Aurelia reported, running a quick diagnostic. "No signs of tampering or—" A movement in her peripheral vision was her only warning. Aurelia spun to see Terran emerging from behind a equipment panel, a Varian pulse weapon in his hand. Behind him came 2 others. The Varian she now recognized as Krell, and another Solarian male from the engineering department. "Step away from the console. Aurelia," Terran ordered, his weapon trained on her. "You've interfered enough." Marcus raised his own weapon, but he was outnumbered and still weakened from radiation exposure. "Security teams are already on their way. Terran, it's over." Krell gave a harsh laugh. "Hardly. While you were playing hero in the core chamber, we implemented our contingency plan. In approximately 7 minutes, a Varian battlecruiser will emerge from hyperspace and destroy this station. We merely need to disable the defensive shields, which requires access to the main power distribution, controlled from here." "Why?" Aurelia demanded, her glow intensifying with anger. "Why destroy Nexus 7? What could you possibly gain?" "Chaos," Terran answered simply. "Disruption of Federation trade routes, a blow to interspecies cooperation, and significant profit for those who positioned themselves correctly beforehand." "You're a Solarian," Aurelia said, disgust evident in her voice. "Our people helped build this station. Hundreds of our kind live here." Tehran's expression hardened. "Our people have been relegated to secondary status in the Federation for too long. The Variants offered an opportunity to reshape the balance of power. By murdering thousands of innocents?" Marcus challenged. "Regrettable but necessary casualties," Krell interjected. "Now step aside or die here. The outcome for you is the same either way." Aurelia's mind raced. 7 minutes until the battlecruiser arrived. Unknown time until security forces reached them. They needed to stall. The defensive shields can't be disabled from here. She bluffed. That function was moved to a secure location after the last upgrade cycle. Terran's eyes narrowed. You're lying. Shield power distribution routes through the gravity systems. Always has. Check for yourself, Aurelia challenged, gesturing to the console. The configurations were changed last cycle. Uncertainty flickered across Terran's face. He gestured to the other Solarian. Verify. As the engineer moved toward the console, Aurelia caught Marcus's eye, a silent communication passing between them. He gave an almost imperceptible nod. The moment the engineer reached the console, Aurelia acted. Drawing on her bioenergetic field, she released a pulse of golden energy that temporarily blinded everyone in the room. Simultaneously, Marcus fired his weapon at Krell, striking the Varian in the shoulder. Chaos erupted. Terran fired blindly, his shot going wide. Aurelia launched herself at him, her superior height and strength giving her advantage in close quarters. They crashed to the floor, the weapon skittering away. You abomination, Terran snarled, struggling against her grip. You've been an embarrassment to our species since the day you emerged from the breeding pools. And yet, Aurelia replied, pinning him firmly, I'm not the one betraying everything our people stand for. Across the room, Marcus had engaged with the second Solarian engineer, using his intelligence training to compensate for his weakened state. Krell was down, clutching his wounded shoulder, but still conscious and reaching for his fallen weapon. Aurelia saw the danger. Marcus! The Varian! Marcus spun, kicked the weapon from Krell's reach, but the momentary distraction allowed the Solarian engineer to land a solid blow. Marcus staggered, his already compromised body failing him. Terran seized the opportunity, breaking free of Aurelia's hold and diving for his weapon. Aurelia lunged after him, her golden form streaking across the control center floor. Marcus! She shouted. The shield controls! Understanding flashed across Marcus's face. He disengaged from the Solarian engineer with a practiced move and staggered toward the main console. If they couldn't stop the traitors from disabling the shields, they could at least ensure the shields remained at maximum strength when the Varian cruiser arrived. Aurelia caught Terran just as his fingers closed around the pulse weapon. They grappled fiercely, her superior strength matched against his desperate fury. Her glow intensified with each surge of adrenaline. The control room bathed in pulsating golden light. You never belonged among us, Terran hissed, his face contorted with hatred. A freak of nature, an evolutionary dead end. And yet, Aurelia replied through gritted teeth, I'm the one who saved this station while you tried to destroy it. With a tremendous effort, she wrenched the weapon from his grasp and struck him across the temple with it. Terran slumped, momentarily stunned, but not unconscious. Across the room, Marcus had reached the console but found himself confronted by Krell, who had managed to retrieve a secondary weapon from his boot. The Varian's shoulder bled profusely, but his aim remained steady. Step away, human, Krell ordered. You're already dying from radiation poisoning. Make it easy on yourself. Marcus stood his ground, hands poised over the shield controls. I've never been one for taking the easy path. The second Solarian engineer circled behind Marcus, preparing to strike. Aurelia saw the danger and acted instinctively. Drawing on reserves of bioenergetic power she'd never fully tapped before, she projected a concentrated burst of golden energy directly at the engineer. The force knocked him backward into a wall of equipment, circuits sparking as he collapsed. The display of power momentarily distracted Krell. Marcus seized the opportunity, diving for cover as he activated the emergency shield protocol, a sequence designed to lock shield systems at maximum power, requiring commander-level authorization to override. No! Krell shouted, firing wildly at Marcus. One shot grazed his arm, tearing through fabric and flesh. Aurelia felt rather than saw Marcus's pain. Something primal and protective surged within her. Her glow transformed from its usual golden warmth to a searing white-hot radiance that filled the entire control center. The light was so intense that both Krell and Terran shielded their eyes, crying out in pain. Taking advantage of their temporary blindness, Aurelia moved with unprecedented speed. She disarmed Krell with one powerful strike, then turned to secure Tauren, who was attempting to crawl toward an emergency exit. "Marcus!" she called, moderating her glow as she restrained both conspirators. "Are the shields secure?" "Locked at maximum," he confirmed, grimacing as he applied pressure to his wounded arm. "They can't be altered without the commander's direct authorization now." A new alarm sounded, different from the gravity emergency signal they'd heard earlier. This was the station's external threat warning. "Proximity alert," the station AI announced. "Unidentified vessel emerging from hyperspace. Defensive posture initiated." "The Varian cruiser," Marcus said grimly. "Right on schedule." Through the control room's viewport, they watched as a sleek, predatory vessel materialized in the darkness of space, its weapon systems already powering up. Nexus 7's defensive shields shimmered into full visibility as they absorbed the first barrage of energy weapons. "The shields are holding," Aurelia reported, checking the readings on a nearby display. "But they won't last indefinitely against a warship of that class." The door to the control center suddenly burst open as a squad of security officers swarmed in, weapons drawn. Behind them stood Commander Drill, his 4 eyes quickly assessing the situation. "Secure the prisoners," he ordered, gesturing to Terran, Krell, and the unconscious engineer. As his security team complied, the commander moved to Aurelia and Marcus. "The station is under attack. 3 Varian vessels have emerged from hyperspace and are firing on our shields." "We've locked the shield systems at maximum power," Marcus informed him, still clutching his wounded arm. "But they won't hold forever against that kind of firepower." "Our defensive fleet is responding," the commander said, "but they're minutes away. We need to buy time." Aurelia studied the tactical display, her mind working through possibilities. "Commander, the station's gravitational field could be temporarily extended beyond our normal perimeter." "To what end?" the commander asked. "To disrupt their targeting systems, possibly even their propulsion," Aurelia explained. "It would require redirecting power from non-essential systems and a complete reconfiguration of the gravitational array. But it's possible." "Do it," the commander ordered without hesitation. Aurelia moved to the main console, fingers flying across the controls as she initiated the complex sequence of commands. "I'll need to modulate the field manually to counter their movements. It's never been attempted at this scale before." "What are the risks?" Commander Drill asked. "Overtaxing the core, power fluctuations throughout the station, possible structural stress on the outer sectors," she replied honestly. "But considerably less risk than being destroyed by Varian warships." The commander nodded grimly. "Proceed." Marcus moved to stand beside Aurelia, studying the display. Despite his injuries, his mind remained sharp. "If you create gravitational eddies rather than a uniform field, you might disrupt their formation more effectively." Aurelia glanced at him with newfound respect. "That's actually brilliant. It would require less power and create more tactical confusion." Her fingers adjusted the parameters. Like this. On the tactical display, they watched as Nexus 7's gravitational influence extended outward in rippling waves, creating pockets of distorted space around the attacking vessels. Almost immediately, the precision of the Varian weapons fire deteriorated, shots going wide of the station. "It's working," Commander Drill observed. "Their attack pattern is breaking down." One of the smaller variant ships drifted into a particularly strong gravitational eddy and began to spin, its engines flaring as they attempted to compensate. The ship's trajectory brought it dangerously close to the lead cruiser, forcing the larger vessel to alter course abruptly. "Defensive fleet arriving in 3 minutes," a security officer reported. "We need to increase the gravitational disruption," Aurelia decided, making further adjustments. "If we can keep them off balance until our reinforcements arrive." The console beneath her hand suddenly sparked, systems protesting the unprecedented demands. The gravity core's temperature was rising rapidly, approaching dangerous levels. "The core can't sustain this output much longer," Aurelia warned. 2 minutes at most before we risk overload." Marcus studied the readouts, then looked up at her with sudden inspiration. "Your bioenergetic field. Could you use it to stabilize the core the way you supported me in the chamber?" "That would require direct contact with the core systems," Aurelia said, considering the possibility. "And a level of energy channeling I've never attempted." "But it's theoretically possible," Commander Drill asked. Aurelia nodded slowly. "Theoretically, yes. My bioluminescence is essentially controlled gravitational energy at the cellular level. With proper modulation, I could potentially reinforce the core's containment field." The decision crystallized in her mind as another barrage from the variant ships struck the station's shields, causing the lights to flicker momentarily. "I need direct access to the core interface," she announced, already moving toward the specialized control panel reserved for emergency core management. "It's too dangerous," Marcus protested, following her. "The energy requirements could kill you." Aurelia turned to him, her golden eyes steady. "There are 7,423 lives aboard this station. Marcus, including yours." Her glow pulsed gently. "Some things are worth the risk." Before he could argue further, she placed her hands on the core interface, a specialized panel designed to allow direct manipulation of the gravity core's fundamental parameters. Immediately, she felt the system's energy flowing into her, a torrent of power that threatened to overwhelm her consciousness. Aurelia closed her eyes, focusing her mind on the patterns of energy. She'd studied gravitational mathematics her entire life, developed the adaptive resonance model that made Nexus 7 possible. If anyone could interface directly with the core, it was her. Her glow intensified dramatically, golden light building to near-blinding levels. The energy flowed through her and back into the system, creating a feedback loop that stabilized the fluctuating core. Through this connection, she gained unprecedented control over the station's gravitational field. On the tactical display, the effects were immediate and stunning. The gravitational eddies became more precise, enveloping each variant ship in a customized field that disrupted their specific configurations. One of the smaller vessels lost propulsion entirely, drifting helplessly. The main cruiser struggled against invisible forces that pushed and pulled it from multiple directions simultaneously. "Defensive fleet arriving," announced the security officer. "They're moving to engage the variant ships." Commander Drill watched the tactical display with all 4 eyes wide. "Extraordinary. I've never seen anything like this." Marcus stood beside Aurelia, concern etched on his face as he watched her body tremble with the strain of channeling such enormous energy. "Aurelia," he said softly, "the fleet is here. You can stop now." But Aurelia was in too deep. Her consciousness merged with the gravitational systems. Through that connection, she sensed a desperate power surge from the variant cruiser. They were attempting one final, massive weapons discharge directly at the station's core. "Incoming concentrated fire," she warned, her voice strangely resonant with harmonic overtones. "They're targeting the central hub." Without conscious thought, Marcus placed his hand over hers on the interface panel, His body jerked as the energy flow suddenly included him in its circuit, but he didn't pull away. Instead, he focused his mind on supporting Aurelia, offering his strength to reinforce hers. The unexpected connection created something new, a harmonic resonance between human and Solarian bioenergetic patterns. The golden light surrounding Aurelia took on bluish highlights, where Marcus's hand touched hers, the combined energy spreading to envelop them both. Through their joined consciousness, Aurelia directed the station's gravitational field with unprecedented precision, creating a localized distortion directly in the path of the Varian cruiser's attack. As the massive energy beam fired, it encountered the distortion and curved, its trajectory bending completely around the station before dissipating harmlessly into space. The Varian cruiser, having expended massive energy on the failed attack, now drifted powerless as the Federation defensive fleet surrounded it. The two smaller vessels were already disabled, one leaking atmosphere from a ruptured hull section. "They're surrendering," Commander Drill announced, watching the communications display. "The Varian commander is requesting terms." Aurelia barely heard him. The strain of maintaining the gravitational control was overwhelming her systems. Her golden glow flickered erratically, and she felt her consciousness beginning to fade. "Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't. Hold it." "Let go," he urged, his hand still firmly over hers. "It's over. We won." With tremendous effort, Aurelia began disengaging from the core interface, carefully unwinding the complex energy patterns to avoid a catastrophic backlash. As the connection diminished, her glow gradually returned to its normal intensity, though significantly dimmer than usual. When the final connection broke, Aurelia collapsed. Marcus caught her despite his own injuries, cradling her larger form awkwardly but determinedly. "Medical team to gravity control. Now!" Commander Drill barked into his communicator. He moved to help Marcus support Aurelia's weight. "That was the most extraordinary thing I've ever witnessed," he said quietly. "You two just saved everyone aboard this station." Aurelia's eyes fluttered open, her glow pulsing weakly. "The core?" "Stable," the commander confirmed. "Everything is stable." Marcus still held her hand, unwilling to break the connection that had forged something profound between them. "You were magnificent," he told her, his blue eyes intense with emotion. "Absolutely magnificent." As the medical team rushed in, Aurelia's last conscious thought was that for the first time in her life, someone had seen all of her size, her glow, her power, and found it not merely acceptable, but magnificent. 3 months later, Aurelia stood at the large viewport in the newly redesigned Gravity Control Center, watching the graceful dance of ships arriving and departing from Nexus 7. The station had undergone significant repairs following the Varian attack, but it had emerged stronger, its systems upgraded and its security protocols enhanced. So much had changed in those 3 months. The Varian plot had been fully exposed, with ramifications extending to the highest levels of several governments. Ambassador Dreth and 17 other conspirators had been arrested and charged with terrorism and attempted mass murder. Terran faced additional charges of treason against the Solarian Union. Most significantly for Aurelia, her role in saving the station had transformed her position within the Nexus 7 community. No longer did beings shrink away when she passed. Instead, they nodded respectfully, or even stopped to express their gratitude. Her size and glow, once sources of ostracism, were now recognized as the outward manifestations of the power that had protected them all. Contemplating the universe, Chief Engineer, a familiar voice asked. Aurelia turned to see Marcus approaching, looking fully recovered from his radiation exposure and battle injuries. As Earth's newly appointed head of security for Nexus 7, His diplomatic cover had been replaced with an official recognition of his true expertise. "Just appreciating the view," she replied, her glow brightening naturally in his presence. "The station feels different now." "You mean because people aren't acting like idiots around you anymore?" Marcus suggested with his characteristic directness. Aurelia laughed, a sound that had become less rare in recent months. "That's one way to put it, though I suspect the change has more to do with heroism than enlightenment. Fear is temporarily overcome by gratitude, but prejudice has deep roots." "Maybe," Marcus acknowledged, moving to stand beside her at the viewport. "But change has to start somewhere, and saving 7,000 lives is a pretty good starting point." He reached for her hand, a gesture that had become familiar between them. The touch still created a small energy surge, a harmonic resonance that had persisted since their shared connection to the gravity core. Researchers from both Earth and the Solarian Union had expressed interest in studying this phenomenon, but Aurelia and Marcus had politely declined. Some things were too personal for scientific dissection. "The new junior engineers are arriving tomorrow," Aurelia noted. "2 Solarian females among them. Apparently, my unconventional career path has inspired some changes in the Union's educational policies." "Trailblazer," Marcus said with evident pride. "Though I imagine they'll have an easier time of it, having you as a mentor rather than someone like Taryn." "I hope so." Aurelia's glow pulsed thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about the adaptive resonance model and how it might be expanded beyond Nexus 7. There are applications for planetary settlements with multiple species, possibly even terraforming operations." "Always thinking bigger," Marcus observed with a smile. "That's what I love about you." The casual declaration hung in the air between them. Though their relationship had deepened significantly over the past months, neither had put such explicit language to their feelings before. Aurelia turned to face him fully, her golden eyes meeting his blue ones. "Is that what you do? Love me?" Marcus held her gaze steadily. "Yes, completely. Every brilliant, glowing, 7-foot inch of you." Her glow surged with emotion, illuminating the entire viewport area. "Even though we're from different worlds, different species? Even though I'll always draw attention, always be an anomaly?" "Especially because of those things," Marcus replied. "You're extraordinary, Aurelia. And if it took me traveling across the galaxy and nearly dying from radiation poisoning to find you, I consider it a bargain." She laughed again, the sound mingling with the golden light that surrounded them both. "You humans have such a unique way of expressing yourselves. Is that a good thing?" "It's a wonderful thing," she assured him, leaning down slightly to touch her forehead to his, a traditional Solarian gesture of profound affection. "And just so we're clear, I love you too. Every confounding, courageous, illogically optimistic bit of you." Behind them, the gravity control center hummed with efficient activity. The systems Aurelia had designed, keeping thousands of beings safely anchored within the station's embrace. Beyond the viewport, stars stretched into infinity, each representing worlds and possibilities they might one day explore together. Aurelia Solaris, who had once existed in careful isolation, now stood bathed in her own golden light, no longer dimming her glow for anyone's comfort. And beside her stood Marcus Clark, the human who had dared to smile at her massive form when no one else would, the first step in a journey neither of them could have imagined. Together, they had saved a station. Together, they had changed perceptions. And together, they now faced a future as vast and bright as Aurelia's golden glow, a light that would never again be hidden,